Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ryan, and welcome to Central Park. We're so happy to continue bringing the park to you through a series of virtual programs, as well as our more informal weekly walks happening every Wednesday at 12:30. Thank you for joining us today on August 3rd, 2022, for another rendition of our weekly walk series. Today, we have a weekly walk titled Leisure on the Lake with me, Ryan. As you may have guessed, we're going to be exploring one of our favorite and most historic water bodies here in Central Park, talking a little bit about some of the leisurely activities we can do during the heat wave here in New York. Because of course, getting nearby water and taking it easy is exactly the right pace we want to do when we're experiencing these over 90-degree days. So thank you for joining us and for supporting us at the Central Park Conservancy. Our mission here at the Central Park Conservancy is, of course, to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. We certainly couldn't do it without your help, so thank you for joining us virtually and in person and helping to care for the park. As we explore the park today, we are, of course, using Zoom, so please use the chat feature to let us know where you're joining us from or say hello. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A feature. My colleagues Desiree and Jose will be on the back end answering any questions you might have. The last thing you'll see pop up throughout the walk today are going to be some visitor polls that'll launch. And once those polls have been voted in, I'll share the results and we'll see what we're thinking. Last thing, of course, you'll see coming up on the screen now are going to be transcripts that we're using. Transcripts for captions, you do have the ability to turn them off using that CC icon or the live transcript option on your Zoom toolbar. But feel free to ask in the chat if you are having trouble with that. Without any further ado, though, we'll jump into our long walk around the lake, which just so happens to be the largest naturalistic body of water in Central Park. And you might be saying, whoa, the largest body of water in Central Park. And I didn't say the largest body of water, the largest naturalistic body of water, which means the largest body of water that's meant to look like a real lake rather than a human-created reservoir like the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir. On that subject, actually, I'll launch our first poll, which is how large in terms of acres how large do you think the lake here in Central Park is? I'll give everybody a few moments to vote in that poll as we look over our map, as we begin over at East 72nd Street along Fifth Avenue, a familiar entranceway to the park. We're going to come into the heart of the park along the Bethesda Terrace side, wrapping around a favorite shoreline of mine, the southern edge of the lake, as we make our way to the northwest corner, ending just up near the west side of the Ramble. So as we begin, we'll start over at East 72nd Street, entering the park again along Fifth Avenue on a nice, relatively cloudy day. Still plenty of sun and plenty of heat coming down, but luckily we get some shady patches to keep us cool until we get to the lake and start to see some water. But as we begin our walk, we can enter the park, and even though it's nice and hot in the park, there is still plenty of activity, from four-legged friends walking around to people bicycling and even people running in this heat. As we make our way a bit further in, though, we can see there's still plenty of serene areas to enjoy a little bit of quiet time and maybe read by yourself, like under the shade of one of these large elm trees as we walk a little bit closer to the lake. As we make our way down, we can glance over to our right, though, and we can see a pretty famous site, the Pilgrim Statue that gives Pilgrim Hill its name. This lawn typically has a lot of people hanging out under it, but particularly during the spring season. Because during the spring season, all of these beautiful Yoshino cherry blossoms pictured here release their amazing white and pink blooms and allow people to engage in the act hanami, or picnicking underneath. During these summer seasons, though, we don't see too many people attracted to this hill, which primarily gets its use during winter for sledding and spring for cherry blossoms. But as we make our way a little bit further on, we'll head towards the water, which is where everybody's trying to be on a hot day like today. As we wrap just down the park a little bit, we can notice there is some fencing going on, as some of these areas that were previously opened are closed. And they're closed for good reason. As you're familiar, we at the Central Park Conservancy care for all 843 acres of Central Park. Speaking of acres, actually, let me end and share that poll. And it's looking like a majority of everybody actually did hit the nail on the head with 20 acres. We're going to see the lake being the largest naturalistic body of water in Central Park, coming in at about 20 acres. Of course, a lot smaller than the 106 acres of the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, but the lake is the largest naturally appearing water body that was created in the park. And it comes in at 20 acres. So as we make our way a little bit closer to that 20-acre water body, we can first indulge in some of the green grassy lawns, good contrast to those typically blue water bodies. We can see that this lawn surrounding Pilgrim Hill is currently closed because we actually just recently restored this area. As you're of course aware, or hopefully aware, we at the Central Park Conservancy care for all 843 acres in Central Park. We do care for everything from the statues and architecture to, of course, the lawns and landscapes. Our first project actually in Central Park was a lawn where we restored Sheep Meadow, one of the most famous grassy meadows in Central Park. And since our inception in 1980, we've invested over $1 billion into Central Park. Of course, grassy areas are a favorite for people to hang out. So I'd like actually to launch my second poll here today. One that really is coming to mind with these grassy landscapes. I had acres on the mind today for some reason. So I wanted to launch this next poll. How many acres of meadows do you think Central Park has? Now, I'm not talking about all the lawns or all the grass in Central Park, but really specifically Sheep Meadow, Great Lawn, and North Meadow, which are going to be the three major meadows and lawn-filled areas in Central Park. So I'll let everybody vote in that for just a little bit, and I'll continue our walk around this newly restored grassy area. You'll also, of course, see signs talking a little bit about the work we're doing in various areas to let people know, again, why their favorite area might be fenced off for a short time being. These projects, of course, are very important, and just keeping fences up for a short period of time can allow these grassy lawns to be green for a majority of the year for millions of visitors to enjoy. So a short temporary closure is not a big deal when we're getting the fabulous results we do. As we continue through, I'll let people vote for another moment in that poll, and we'll start to make our way through trefoil arch. Trefoil arch getting its name from some of the decorative patterns we see here, like of course those beautiful emblems carved into the brownstone that sit just beside its east side entrance or exit way. What's really nice about this, beyond its just ornate crafted beauty, is the difference that we see in its opening and exit. Depending which way you're looking, either could be the opening or exit. But we see here the initial way we're walking through a three-leaf clover or trefoil, followed by a more rounded, naturalistic type of opening on the other end. And we're seeing this type of architecture really hint as to where we're going. Seeing a very formal side, we're probably walking to a very formal area. And as we walk our way through, we can notice the contrast of the other side, a little bit more rounded, typically covered with viney plants, offering a grand transition to the landscape we're arriving to. As we make our way just up the staircase, we are arriving at none other than the lake, the reason we are on a walk today. But before we get to the lake, I do just want to share the results where we're talking about grass. And I see I had to trick you a little bit with this one by keeping D as the right answer rather than C. We actually have about 55 acres of meadow or lawn in Central Park. You'll find the Great Lawn has about 13 acres. Sheep Meadow is about 20 acres, and North Meadow is about 23 acres. Now those numbers can vary just a little bit, but roughly about 55 acres of lawn or meadow between the three major meadows. Again, this is not taking into account all of the small patches of grass throughout Central Park's 843 acres. But of course, as we make our way away from some of the lawn areas, we're going to come up to some water features, some things that we certainly like to indulge ourselves with on these hot summery days. So as we start to make our way through Trefoil Arch, we're going to come out at none other than the lake, the 20-acre largest naturalistic body of water in Central Park, and one of the most historic ones. One of the initial views we can see over here is that of the Low Boathouse Restaurant and Cafe, which would open around 1954, replacing a boathouse that once existed over here. Today, this boathouse serves quite a few different functions. Of course, beautiful cafe and restaurant experience and dining right along the most historic water body here in Central Park. And of course, beautiful views to be had around. The views we would have had back in the 1800s, though, would have been a little different, as this boathouse would have been located a little bit more towards the southeast along the lake. be out of view from Bethesda Terrace. And it would have been a two-story wooden boathouse that didn't really have a concession stand or food, but rather served boats for rental. Boats we do still see being rented today, like this postcard, of course, showing the bucolic images we'd see back during about the 1860s or so. Boats would be start to become available in the lake during the early 1860s. It became a great way to engage with this landscape during the warmer summer months. Of course, today there are other ways to engage with the lake at the Low Boathouse, like by having a lakeside diner. Beautiful little setting out here on the piers or docks, looking over, of course, wildlife right next to your bread bowl. As we look along, though, beyond just eating over here, we can still indulge in one of the original traditional features of the wooden boathouse that once existed here, renting boats, of course. Depositing about $20 and paying $20, you'll be able to rent a boat for, do not recall, I think it's 2 hours, I believe, about a 2-hour rental for these rowboats. I actually have yet to go on them, but we'll be crossing that off my bucket list soon. But going out on these rowboats, you can indulge in this traditional activity, sailing around the horseshoe-like shaped lake that doesn't let you see the entirety of it from one point. Really, the best way to explore the lake is from boat. That's actually where you're going to get some of the best views and the most really ease of access. As we look around over the lake, there are plenty of people engaging in this wonderful traditional activity today, and for good reason, as we're enjoying a beautiful day here in Central Park. Again, a little bit of sunny and hot sunshine, but of course, still some shade and cloud cover. As we look back to the past, though, we can remember how this is really a similar sight we'd see throughout the park. Beyond just even the lake being used, we also see some other water bodies like the pond down near the Gapstow Bridge around 59th Fifth Avenue, also being used for boating such as swan boats. The picture we see here, though, is of course boating occurring on the lake. And it's an area and landscape we actually see really a lot of similarities with. We can actually see a lot of the same similar features as we start to make our way around the lake, as well as notice the difference in boats. Beyond the traditional rowboats and the gondoliers that we can still see around the park today, we would also see some larger carrier boats and ferry-style boats that would allow people to ride around the lake without having to do any paddling or oar work. That would cost roughly about 5 cents, which was actually a little pricey during that time. So that was not for somebody that was in a lower financial position, but probably rather for a little bit more financially stable people coming to the park. But of course, if you don't mind rowing, like myself, certainly could get a cheaper rowboat to sail around. Something that, of course, we still see in use today, as there are no more motorized ferry boats or no more boats where people do the work for you, unless you rent one of the gondoliers. But as we travel around the park, there's beautiful views to still be had everywhere, bringing back memories of those pictures of the past, like the one we saw. As we come out to the heart of the park, Bethesda Terrace, we come out to a pretty noisy area that we might not consider much of a leisurely spot. But of course, there's plenty of ways to enjoy leisure in this area. Maybe sitting down, getting a break from the sun, from the shine, enjoying some music and soaking in the culture of New York City. Of course, there's always a lot of music occurring and a lot of culture, a lot of high energy, a lot of noises in areas like this. While it might be annoying to some, it is kind of traditional and really historic in a way, because we can think to the past of what we may have heard if really all of the plans for Central Park came to be. The plan we see here is actually an idea by Frederick Law Olmsted, one of the original designers of Central Park. He actually wanted to put a bandstand in Central Park. We would see a bandstand coming. However, his idea was to put a bandstand floating on water on the lake. So when we come to Bethesda Terrace and areas like this, we can sit down along the edge of the shoreline and hear the music coming from the water to us. Now, this idea never really came to fruition, and we don't see it actually occurring. But it's funny to hear performers at Bethesda Terrace today and think about what it would have been like to see a floating jazz band in the middle of a Wednesday here in Central Park out in the water. Of course, a lot of designs like these never came to be, but it's fun to imagine what the park would have been like, and of course, even see the parallels and similarities that naturally exist in the park today. As we come into Bethesda Terrace, though, I think more people are drawn to the water's edge rather than the performers or entertainers. Because along the water's edge, we get some of the most beautiful views, as well as plenty of encounters from our favorite types of wildlife, plenty of different fresh blooms of flowers, and of course, close encounters with our favorite terrapins plenty of turtles hanging out along the shoreline, hoping to maybe get a bite to eat. But again, don't feed wildlife. They have plenty of food to enjoy. Whether you sit along the water of the lake or the water of fountains like the Bethesda fountain we can see here, otherwise known as the Angel of the Waters, you can enjoy some of the beautiful shoreline water plants. Different things like papyrus, water lilies can be seen here. Always nice to see those lily pads floating around as well. What's really interesting is whether you're sitting along the shoreline water of the lake or the water of one of these fountains, the water is coming from the same place, because the water that feeds both the water bodies in Central Park as well as the water fountain, or rather not the water fountains that you're drinking from, but rather the decorative ornamental fountains, is going to be none other than Croton Aqueduct water, or tap water. Water from New York's earliest drinking system, one that originally made a stop off here in Central Park. And since the park's initial inception back in the 1860s and still to this day, we see it helping to fuel all of, again, these different types of fountains, ornamental fountains, as well as water bodies like the lake. So really amazing to see this connection of water. As we do make our way just a little bit beyond Bethesda Terrace, we'll enjoy that water and that nice little shoreline edge view near Bethesda Fountain. And we'll start making our way along the more western, southwestern shoreline of the lake. And as we wrap around, we can get a nice little bit of break from the sun under these tall growing trees. We could also see an interesting little bit of activity occurring up to our left. As we zoom in a little bit and look, we can see some people up here, what appears to be having, looks like a sword fight. Now, while this picture might seem like it's a violent event occurring, it's actually a more lighthearted practice and training session going on right here. So it was interesting to see the different activities happening in the park. And it's always nice to get a reminder that there has been and still is so many different uses for Central Park. And it's also important to remember that even though the uses might not directly align with our personal favorable things to do in the park, everybody can find space to enjoy themselves in Central Park as long as we're respecting each other and the park. Of course, plenty of room in these 843 acres for everybody to find some space to do something they love. As we make our way along the shoreline, whether you want to see people engaging in training or practice, or just have a quiet shoreline experience, you can certainly get that as you walk around the lake. And seeing these views of the boathouse in the background and people sailing around, again, it makes me reflect on the views we would have had that would have been very similar many years ago. Looking out, seeing views like that boathouse sticking out, renting out boats. The same rocks like the one we can see just sticking out behind the tree over here on the left of the point and the ramble, as well as some of the boat landings that we can see sticking through areas like just in that kind of back left corner. But a similar view today. While the boathouse may have changed up a little bit and kind of been moved around slightly, we can see many of the same, again, traditional types of views and things we would see around Central Park. As we keep moving past the lake's southwestern shoreline area, we'll come up to a favorite bridge that passes over the lake. One of only two bridges that actually will pass over the lake. We're actually going to see both of those bridges on our walk today. Here's the first, the very famous Bow Bridge, which, as we can see from that previous photo, is quite crowded. So it's not the most leisurely space unless you hang over the edge and really just enjoy the view that we're overlooking. Of course, plenty of people stopping by to take photos and enjoy the beautiful views, and for good reason. Of course, one of the most famous bridges in the park, and one that looks even more beautiful, thanks to about a 2011 restoration that we did at the Central Park Conservancy to help bring back these flower urns that were historically lost for a long time. We're able to actually use one of the few remaining ones to help replicate the original traditional design and bring these back to Bow Bridge, providing just a little extra hint of beauty to our overlooking landscape. And of course, this beauty attracts so many different people to come here for wedding shoots, for engagements, for party shoots, for any type of photo shoot really, because of course, it's such a beautiful area. But as you do come to the park to use it for photo shoots, for events, do remember how we can care for the park and how we can respect it. Walking along, I did notice a lot of these fake flower petals. These fake flower petals are typically made of a synthetic type of plastic. And as you can guess, that isn't going to deteriorate or degrade or go away. When you do come to the park and you do use props and things like that, try to respect the park rules and consider alternatives to plastic materials like this. Rather than using plastic rose petals, consider using red construction paper or paper that is biodegradable. That way, if you do forget or miss a couple pieces when you're cleaning up, it doesn't harm the environment like this plastic will. Of course, plenty of alternatives and different ways to make a difference in the park. As we keep walking along the southwestern shoreline, we'll of course get plenty of beautiful views and a lot more peaceful, leisurely areas as we get away from the craziness of Boat Bridge. Coming over along the benches, we find plenty of room to be able to spread out and enjoy our view. Why not stop and take a sit on a bench dedicated to none other than tennis great Billie Jean King? You can find countless different celebrities who have their endowed benches throughout the park. Billie Jean King along this route. We also, along this route a little bit further or earlier on near the mall, passed by a Jim Henson bench, but a couple different celebrities that you can see really around this area. Billie Jean King, though, her bench offers a beautiful little view overlooking the lake, getting some of the beautiful buildings in there, like the San Remo, this 2-point on our right, and I believe the Landheim just here kind of tucked away beneath the shoreline or the tree line of the lake. But a beautiful view that encompasses a little bit of everything from modern architecture, architecture of the past in terms of those boathouses, beautiful natural plants, and of course, traditional activities like rowboating. As we look along the shoreline, we can find countless different beautiful species of plants. This Joe Pye weed is a native type of kind of reed plant that grows along a lot of shorelines, but also in wildflower meadows and native areas like that. You can find some in the Dean Slope and butterfly gardens as well. It's a really good shoreline plant, though. Nice, beautiful, almost like brown lavender kind of hint to it. But it does, of course, add a little bit of extra beauty to our walk. It is important to remember, though, that these plants don't always look like a perfect floral arrangement in a flower shop. They often grow very naturally, getting very out of hand. And the reason the park always looks so beautiful and we have these views available is thanks to the tireless work of our operations staff. Many of our natural areas or water body teams, our turf care teams, all of our different teams that are caring and trimming up plants, doing a lot of horticulture and pruning projects. These plants would very quickly overwhelm the entire shoreline and completely block out our view, if not for the hard work of pruning and taking care of some of these. We can see a drastic difference as primarily one species of plant, Phragmites, also known as mile-a-minute weed because it grows very, very quickly. It's an invasively growing plant that would completely choke out and take over the landscape, preventing other plants from getting any sun or thriving here. So we do have our operations staff go through and remove tremendous amounts of this. This weed grows very, very tall. Might be able to get a general idea from the picture seen behind us. The tallest of these reeds are well or about 10 to 11 feet. So even somebody like myself that's over 6 foot is dwarfed by these plants and you get no view. We can certainly see that in the difference here as Phragmites have been cleared from this lower area, but there still remains a large collection of them. As we start to walk down to the right, just along this path that'll lead to Wagner's Cove, we can get another idea of, again, how tall these plants are growing and how limited our view would be if we didn't have our wonderful operations staff caring for these areas of the park. And of course, these plants, again, just completely blocking out whatever view we would have had from this area, with these plants growing well over 10 to even 12 feet in height. But as we come a little bit further on, we can still see some plenty of little open areas that we can enjoy. And as our operations staff clears these out, we'll only get more access and more diversity amongst the shoreline plants, which is really important because the lake did not always look so nice. We would see a 4-year restoration of the lake being completed in 2010 that would help to remove many of the really rough, hard shorelines, remove a lot of silt and debris from the lake, and of course, diversify the shoreline plants that help to reduce erosion and keep this water body looking healthy and thriving. As we make our way down the path, of course, boat landings also add a little bit of extra excitement to our walk around the park. This one being named Wagner's Cove and being one of about
4 boat landings that were original to the park but lost over time. We would see these boat landings being restored around the 1970s by the Parks Department, restoring or reconstructing 4 of them. However, the reconstructed boat landings were not really faithful to the original park's design. And we do see them later being replaced by us, the Central Park Conservancy, around 2016, I believe, is when we replaced the boat landings, replacing 5 of the original 6 that once existed. The one other one not being able to be completed because it was originally where the new low boathouse exists. But the 5 that were able to be restored had been restored based on their original design. So today we see a lot more authentic boat landings, much like the ones we see in the pictures, background of the pictures we see of historic boating on the lake. As we start to leave Wagner's Cove, we're going to come to the end of our walk, making our way up the western shoreline of the lake and seeing our last few sites before ending at the second bridge to cross over the lake. And on our walk around, just because we're not immediately along the shoreline doesn't mean we can't still see beautiful plants, various types of cone flowers, and a lot of different species of sunflower can be seen around here. These, I believe, are wild sunflowers. As we make our way up, though, we can enjoy plenty of other plants, whether they're in bloom or not, like the wisteria that lines this beautiful tunnel-like walkway leading us along the west side of the lake, right nearby strawberry fields. What you'll also notice too is, again, just the amazing complexities of these structures, which are incredibly constructed in-house by our rustic team, who actually uses sustainably harvested wood from different areas, a lot of black locust, which is a really hardy rot-resistant wood, to help create these types of structures, areas like Copcot, Dean Summer House, the rustic benches, even some of the rustic bridges throughout the park. So really amazing work that helps to just create that more immersive experience in the park. What you also notice too is that, again, the park is being shown as it currently is, real conditions, no beautifying or anything. And of course, as you visit the park, you'll occasionally see things like this, caution tape put up. And that's of course because our operations staff are constantly hard at work, not only weeding and removing pesky plants around shorelines, but also repairing infrastructure, like the many, many benches that exist around the park, over 8,000 of them, helping to replace the wood and repaint them, of course, so we can have proper memorial benches and proper places to sit and enjoy the park. Of course, these benches getting a nice new coat of that fresh, I'm not sure exactly what shade of green we're using, but of course, very foresty and very helpful in enjoying the park, as we can see plenty of people taking the load off, enjoying the shade of the London plane trees and the benches just to the left. But as we start to make our way up, we can break away from this path for a moment and start to experience a little bit more lakeside beauty as we come up to one of the other boat landings that would be restored during that 2016 restoration. These, of course, all looking a little different. Some of these originally being constructed of various materials, largely wood, but wood deteriorating over time. We do see new composite materials being utilized to help create a more sturdy boat landing, such as this one. As we walk up along these shoreline paths, we can find a few wood chip trails that help to create even more of an exclusive type of experience around the lake. Coming up just a little bit further, we'll come up to yet another boat landing. The boat landing we see up here is named Hearn's Head Boat Landing, getting its name from the rock we see extending just beyond it, which is also known as Hearn's Head. Hearn's Head, the home of Ladies Pavilion, gets that name because it's said to, from an aerial perspective, sort of look like a heron's head, which is what Hearn's Head means. But Hearn's Head Boat Landing provides us a beautiful, more open view of the lake, as well as the backdrop with one of my favorite landscapes, not only Hearn's Head, but also the Ramble. We often see usually a jazz band or some type of performer setting up over here, adding a little bit of music to our leisure around this area. Although they're not there today, that doesn't mean we still can't enjoy the beautiful views as well as enjoy the sounds that are naturally coming. But regularly you will see performers existing throughout all of Central Park. Many 2- and 3-piece bands love to set up along the west side of the lake. I'm not exactly sure what draws so many different types of these performers to these areas in particular, but walking along the west side of the lake, you can very often come across 1 to 3 jazz bands performing. And of course, even though we don't have any bands performing right now, we can still enjoy the natural sounds and sights, like some more wild sunflowers. Sunflowers getting their name because, much like these are doing, they are all hanging towards the sun wherever the most open patch of sun will be. We're going to see them leaning and facing directly towards the sun. As we can see, all of these have a nice lean going on right towards Hearn's Head. And from Hearn's Head, we can catch ourselves a little bit of shade and get a break from the sun, looking over the favoring landscapes around, the Ramble in the background, as well as Hearn's Head directly in front of us. These boat landings were meant to really just draw you further in, whether you're exploring the lake by boat or by just walking around, helping to add as a little whimsical feature to bring you a little bit further on. Today, of course, not really serving as spots we can dock up our boats, but rather just beautiful vistas where we can relax and have a leisurely stroll. As we make our way just up the park, we're going to come to our final stop. And as we do come a little bit further up towards the northwest corner of the Ramble, we'll see another bridge, one that doesn't really look as much like a bridge from where we're standing because we're on the top of it. This bridge is best viewed from below. It's known as Balcony Bridge. It gets its name from these balcony-like features, which you can see situated along the top. These little features provide us a nice spot to sit and enjoy some of the beautiful little masonry that exists here. I really like this little kind of cross that we see here. This little reminds me of like a medical emergency kind of cross, but nice little texture and detail we can see amongst the stone carving. And of course, the main purpose of this bridge is to give us a view over the lake. It does have a little inlet of water that does extend out towards the west that did once lead towards a women's portion of the lake that no longer exists, as it would eventually be filled in. It's actually said to be filled in to help reduce a really bad mosquito outbreak that was occurring in the park. But we do see it still having a small trickle of water running underneath us today. However, Balcony Bridge is best viewed from a boat. However, we're not in a boat though, so we're going to go somewhere where we can get a nice view from a bridge for our final viewpoint. As we make our way just up the park a little bit further, we're coming to our ending location, a transitionary point between the lake and the Ramble. This is a favorite point for me. I love how it's a beautiful, formal, ornate bridge, but still has such a simplistic, natural approach to it. As we come over to Oak Bridge, we can enjoy the beautiful architecture that combines a metallic and wooden type of look. Much like the original construction of this bridge, Oak Bridge was originally created from oak, as well as some cast iron. We do see materials shifting over time, as today we see what appears to look like wood, but is rather a metal composite. These newer materials give the imitating look of wood, the original material used for this bridge, Oak Bridge, while still retaining a more hardy type of material that'll last well beyond the traditional 10 or 15 years that wood survives before needing replacement. So these new materials allow us to have the traditional look of Oak Bridge with a lot more strength to it, which is really great because Oak Bridge at one point was replaced by a really ugly bridge getting the name Bankrock Bridge. We would see in 2009, us at the Central Park Conservancy bringing back its more traditional design, which we can see here. And of course, this bridge is really such an amazing part for its location. It bridges the Ramble and this western shoreline of the lake and provides an amazing view over. But as we look over from Oak Bridge, we can take one final view out towards the lake, looking over some of the beautiful rowboating, seeing some of the boat landings far in the distance beyond, as well as favorite landscapes of mine like Hearn's Head. But I love this last view as we see a park patron engaging in the same wonder and whimsy that we have as we look over this landscape that we've probably seen a bunch before, but always seems to remain refreshing and beautiful. As we come to the end of our walk, I want to thank you for joining us on this nice long walk around the lake, where we started over at 72nd and 5th Avenue and ended up just around West 77th Street. Of course, there are no bad areas of the lake to explore, and any shoreline view you get are going to look amazing. So I encourage you to get out and explore the lake and all of Central Park's water bodies. Of course, there are 6 others besides this. We can actually see one of them, the conservatory water, just on the right-hand side of this map. But of course, plenty of exploring left to do in Central Park. And as we do come to the end of our walk, I want to remind you there are plenty of other tours, events, and happenings in Central Park. One of the upcoming events that we have is a return of the Central Park Conservancy Film Festival occurring between August 16th and August 19th. You'll have 4 different opportunities to see various films and presentations. I didn't list the films here, so if you do check the chat or go onto our website, you'll see the film festival link. You can check and see some of the amazing programs that are going to be happening. There is a couple cool ones like the Territory, I believe, on August 16th on Tuesday, as well as the National Parks Film on Wednesday, August 17th. So a lot of really fun different types of movies, documentaries, and all things in between. So be sure to check out that, and also check out some of the other events we have coming up, like the Harlem Mere Performance Festival, which is continuing every Sunday until about mid-August or end of August or so. But if you check the link that are going to be dropped in the chat box, you can get the guaranteed timing of that and come join us for performance again every Sunday between about 2 to 4 p.m. over at the Harlem Mere up near the Charles A. Dana Center. And again, check the links in the chat box to learn more about those programs. I will be leaving this open for a little bit longer in case anybody does have any last minute questions or things like that they would like answered. But I do want to thank everybody so much for joining us and supporting us on these programs. And we hope to see you in the future in person and virtually. So thank you so much for joining us. And from all of us here at the Central Park Conservancy, stay safe, be well, and we'll see you soon.